In this video, we will take up the homework on quadratic formula. So for the first question, they want us to use a quadratic formula and solve for the roots. So I've solved for the exact roots. There's really not much to say aside from the fact that you need to know the quadratic formula. You have to have it memorized. Question 2, they just wanted us to draw some graphs with 2, 1, and no x-intercept. This will make sense as to why they wanted to do the question in the next lesson. For question 3, they want us to solve the quadratic equation. So for 3, A, B, and C, they were not factorable. Okay, so if they're not factorable, then you use the quadratic formula. But I saw 3D, it was factorable, so I was like, of course I'm factoring. There's no point of me using the quadratic formula. Okay, so question 4, 5, I guess, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all word problems, which we'll talk about more in the next lessons. I believe it's the last lesson of the unit. But anyways, we'll talk more about it later. So if you really struggle with those questions, it's okay. You basically have to generate the quadratic equation and then solve it. But generating the quadratic equation requires you to interpret the word problem, just like what you did in the first unit with linear systems. So look at my diagram. I build the equation using the Pythagorean theorem. Bam, 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 solve the equation. For question 5, this one's a little trickier. We will talk about this in the upcoming lesson, but I hope that the diagram helps you out a little. For question 6, they gave you the model. They gave you the equation, so that was easy. Once they give you the equation, it's pretty straightforward. For 6b, basically, once again, they gave you the equation, so there's not much to really add. Yeah, once they give you the equation, there's really not much difficulty because you just punch it into the formula. For question 7, basically you have a cardboard and you're cutting squares out of the corners, folding into a box. Sorry for the messy or the ugly diagram, but that's a rectangular prism box. It's open lid, by the way. Anyways, solve for the area of the base. And then you can solve for x. Or if you know the area of the base is 875 square centimeters, you can solve for x using that fact. Watch your expanding, because if you're expanding correctly, then it'll be disastrous. Oh, you didn't have to use a quadratic formula because it was factorable. And once you know what x is, you can actually solve for the volume of the box. For question 8, pretty straightforward, but you really don't need to use the quadratic formula because you can factor. So as you can tell, like I always try to avoid the quadratic formula if it's factorable. I really regret using the quadratic formula if I see it's factorable. Okay, that was the homework solutions on the quadratic formula.